Hey guys, it's Chris, and before we get started with the Dragon Raised by Wolves Part 2, a lot of you had thanked me a couple months back when I talked about the Amino app, and it is available on iOS and Android, so you can get them on both, and I was primarily talking about the Game of Thrones app, but now it's gotten even better. Of course, you can still do the things like blogs and polls, as well as chat with other members and search communities, but now there is an Amino Master app where you can manage all your communities in one place. Of course, you can explore other communities. You can download the Amino Creator and Manager directly from the Master app and create your own community. So for example, I could create a community called Smokescreen and share all my videos and talk about all the different hobbies and interests that I like. And of course, I still hang out in the Game of Thrones community, as well as the Star Wars community, and also the Walking Dead community. So anyway, check out the new Amino Master app, and you can also find me on there as well in the various communities. Again, I am Smokescreen, so please check it out, and I hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you on Amino. Hey guys, it's Chris, and I'm back with James from Daily Sports Trivia for part 2 of our little series here on Jon Snow's endgame. What we're going to do is just pick up right where we left off in part 1. We had kind of talked about we were talking about the Crypts of Winterfell, so we'll get back to some of that speculation on his connection to the Crypts of Winterfell, his connection to the White Walkers in some way, being a Stark. So let's get to a Dragon Raised by Wolves Part 2.
So do you think these dreams he's having, where he's drawn to the crypts, and there's something that kind of scares him?
Yeah, there's a lot of theories about the Crypts of Winterfell, and there's something to that because it's mentioned too much for it not to be. He's drawn by something, and it could be his fire side or the Targaryen stuff in him. I mean, if the Ice Queen theory holds true, that would obviously be the connection there.
So that side.
But I think it makes sense for his Targaryen side. So there was an event called the Dance with Dragons back in the day, and it was a Targaryen civil war, and it was basically two factions of the Targaryens, fighting over who should rule. And there was a side called the Blacks. There was the Blacks and the Greens. It was based off some clothes they were wearing, is where they got the nicknames Blacks and Greens. But this is when the dragons were still around. There were still, dragon riders that ruled as far as the Targaryen dynasty. And a guy named Jacaerys Valerian rode to Winterfell on his dragon Vermax. He rode to meet, at the time, Lord Rhagar Stark to get his allegiance for the Blacks. And in exchange for their allegiance, there was supposed to be what's called the Pact of Ice and Fire, where a prince of Winterfell would marry a Targaryen. And that never happened. But anyway, the point being that a lot of people have speculated that Vermax laid a clutch of dragon eggs down in the Winterfell crypts while he was there, because they just rode dragons around like horses in those days.
Wow.
That could be something where Jon is being drawn down through the crypts. Now I don't know how a dragon, would go down and fit and lay a clutch of eggs or what have you, if that's possible, or how big it was, or all that kind of stuff as far as the logistics of getting to a spot and laying a clutch of eggs. But that would be very, very cool and make sense for his Targaryen blood, the magical DNA, right? For him to be drawn towards something like that. It would.
Dany was.
Yeah, Dany, when she saw those eggs, she couldn't take her eyes off
right.
them. That's definitely something that's kind of a parallel there, I think. It's a possibility. Now, am I saying there's dragon eggs in the bottom of Winterfell? No, I don't know. I think it's a cool thought. But there's been other dragon eggs throughout our story, so I think that would be something maybe just to point towards Jon's heritage, not necessarily his endgame, although his heritage does relate to his endgame. But there's been a lot of theories about Winterfell. There's been theories that, Rhaegar's heart perhaps is down there, perhaps his armor's down there in Lyanna's crypt. There's something down there that's drawing Jon to his Targaryen side, his fire side, so to speak. So, it's always been speculated about Winterfell, because there's hot springs that it's built upon, and it says that the hot water runs through the walls and helps keep the place warm.
Yeah.
And so people say there's a dragon under Winterfell. Now, I don't think there's a real dragon under Winterfell. I think that's people saying, hey, something's keeping the water warm.
Yeah.
Because they don't understand natural springs.
Yeah, it said Catelyn's room was warm.
So there's a lot of theories, but there's something going on with those crypts. And I think the whole actual dragon thing being down there, I don't think that makes much sense. I think it's more of like a fairy tale. Like this is why there's hot water coming up under because there's a dragon keeping it warm with its fire. You know, so I think that's more of a myth type thing. But at the same time, there's too many references to the Crypts of Winterfell, Jon being drawn there, and again, that could be just a reference since we haven't got the reveal in the books about the actual parentage. That could be, you know, his Targaryen side calling to him. You know, like he's drawn to something, but he don't know what it is.
Can I switch gears on you for a second?
Sure.
Okay. We're guessing, or I'm assuming we're guessing, that Jon's ultimate goal, or what he needs to do, is whatever the first hero or whatever did. We're assuming that he's gonna have to do the same thing,
right? Or something to that effect.
But we're
similar.
not thinking that he's gonna jab a sword in anybody to make a fiery.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think a sacrifice is definitely a possibility in some way, shape, or form, whether that's him or Dany, because a lot of people say that, you know, Jon may be the sacrifice. Like, he has to become, you know, the new Night King and rule the wall again to lead his army of White Walkers and keep them from ever coming back. You know, like, him
not
having
necessarily
to go,
dying.
not necessarily death, but he has to go away and become something else to become the gatekeeper, so to speak.
I'm with you. And
then the men, the kingdom of men, continue to thrive south and north. Nobody goes to keep the peace if they're not able to destroy each other.
Why not, Chris?
So it's a possibility.
Say Dany's on this throne down here. Let's assume
right.
The fire is down here, the ice is up there, and he's going to be the buffer.
And again, that goes back to, like I was saying, if you could lay out a graphic with ice on one side and fire on the other, then Jon's in the middle. That would fit that literally.
Dang, it would, man.
So I mean, that's certainly a possibility. A lot of people think that, you know, he will take Longclaw and plunge it through Dany like Nisa once they fall in love. If
that's what I'm getting. I don't think he's. And I can't imagine
I can see some like a sacrifice happening, but not to make a sword of fire, because what does a flaming sword do now that a Valyrian steel sword doesn't already do?
Yeah, they kill him.
Yeah, I mean, they killed him. They kill him automatically. They're, you know, unless it shoots laser beams or has some big magical thing where he can literally shoot fire out of a sword, it makes no sense for it to be a literal sword. I mean, a dragon can be Lightbringer. If he's a dragon rider, that can be Lightbringer. You know, dragons have been called, you know, flaming swords, basically, from the sky.
Wow.
But at the same time, if you think about just the dragon rider thing, you know, if Dany's riding a dragon and then somebody else rides and Jon's a dragon rider, does that make him any more special than, say, Tyrion, who can ride a dragon?
No.
So that's why I don't think that necessarily fits either. Not that he won't be a dragon rider, but that's not the end game.
That's not his role.
It's not his role. It's just to pilot one of them. Because if Tyrion can do that, and somebody else perhaps, and maybe even the books, Aegon, who's supposedly Aegon, and even if he's a Blackfire, he still has Targaryen, you know, king's blood, Valyrian blood. He could even, you know, pilot a dragon, so to speak. So that doesn't make Jon special in that sense. So it's definitely beyond just riding a dragon. He may very well ride a dragon, but it's either going to have to end where White Walkers and dragons die completely, go away, you know, no more weapons of mass destruction, or again, like we think, like I'm leaning towards, that the last hero made some kind of agreement and they have to go away and we have to do this, and then there's some kind of peace that's got to be upheld.
Oh, and let me ask you this also, and this could seem so dumb to you guys, I'm sorry. Is there any way that he is special enough to walk up and pull that ice, that dragon glass out of him? And
hey, you never know. We talked about that the other night. I was just sitting there thinking, well, you know, what if, you know, Dragonfire can kill White Walkers, and we're assuming it can, like wildfire, Dragonfire, it's got magical properties.
Yeah, we assume it can. Yeah,
it's not regular fire. Where
we saw when you showed me Hardhome, he walked in that regular fire.
Yeah, and just like you saw when they attacked the cave at Bloodraven's place, right?
Yeah,
they walk the fire.
That's right.
Their mist just kind of puts the fire to the side. So regular fire, no effect. Whites are obviously affected by that, but so we all assume because of Valyrian steel works, because Dragonglass works, that Dragonfire will work the same way. It's different. It's magical, and since there's magical properties to wildfire, and Bran saw that vision, he was seeing the tools he needs to let Jon know what, you know, to fight this battle. So I think that probably works But what I was speculating and just thinking about is, what if the Night King can't be killed that way, and you have to remove the dragon glass in his chest?
That is the cycle.
And to end the whole thing, because otherwise, now I'm not saying that was just speculation, because you see that, otherwise why show us a specific way of him being created? They could have just touched him in some way or said some words, but they specifically chose to take something of fire, which is dragon glass associated with volcanic activity, etc.
Yeah.
And shove it in his heart, which I think therefore creates his weakness to it in all things fire related. So therefore, what if he can only be killed by somebody that has to pull that thing out physically?
Yeah.
And what if for some reason it takes again, you could also say, well, that could be anybody that gets close enough. But what if he's got some kind of ability to get close enough physically to resist him or whatever to pull that thing out? In other words, could another Targaryen do it, and it'd be anybody? Like, could Dany walk up and yank it out? If she got him on the ground physically or whatever. But what if he's got some ice immunity because of his Stark blood to resist whatever he's trying to do back? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah.
I know that's kind of wild and crazy, but it was just some speculation based off, if you kill the leader, somehow does the rest of them fall? You know what I mean? Like the head of the snake, right?
When we were talking the other day about that, I said, what if they figure out what it is that they're after, or what's got them riled up, and they bait them, remember? And I said they have a moat of wildfire around them, and Jon has to sacrifice himself, say, light it, I'm not going to come out of this.
Right.
I'm not going to come out, but I'm going to get him alone.
It very well could be.
Get this.
Because I'm going to tell you right now, the Night King knows something about Jon. And you saw it with Bloodraven. He came into Bloodraven's cave, and he's like, I finally got you, motherfucker.
Yeah, that look.
Look, he knew him, he smirked, he sat there and stared at him like, you finally got him after all these years. And then Hardhome on the show, now Jon didn't go to Hardhome in the books, but in the show, this stare down was like, I know you're familiar to me, we're related possibly,
right?
Whatever it is, we share the same blood, so he knew something was up. That stare down wasn't just for dramatic effect, because that could have been, Tormund staring back at him, or, Jon was injured perhaps, and Dolores Ed, but it had to be Jon, so he knew something about Jon, and he saw him kill the White Walker with the Valyrian steel sword.
Yeah.
So that kind of goes back to, what are they reacting to? Are they after him? Are they after, some people say they were after Craster's 99th son, which was Gilly's baby. But they were already active before Gilly's baby. So they're reacting to something old, something older that happened, some event.
Right. And if you had to guess, the wall comes down.
I think so, yep.
Okay. Completely? Or just a section for him to get through, or
that's debatable. I mean, I would think if he can, I think we saw a glimpse of what he's going to do with Bloodraven's cave. When he reached down, and after the mark took off the magical warding.
Yes.
But when he kind of tested it out to make sure he was good to go, by touching that ground, and the crevice went all the way up through the fire and through the cave and shattered part of the top of it. Now, he could have been doing that just to make a hole for the whites or something, but I think that was testing the mark.
I swear, it does
seem
like
that. That seemed like foreshadowing to me that he's going to do that to the wall.
Yeah. And Bran still has that mark.
And Bran still has the right. Assuming he still has the mark, which you would think that he would know that though. Like Bloodraven said, he can, because he said he can't get it here. He can now. So he told him that. You would think that Bran would kind of know that and not, go through the wall. But he really has no choice. Maybe he has to go through the wall to get to Jon or whoever to let him know what's going to happen and how to deal with it.
All right, if he's a Stark, Winterfell, his first stop will be there if he goes through that wall.
Essentially, I mean, you have some other, the Castle Black, you have Molestown, and some other little stops in between. But yeah, that's the big place right beyond the wall.
Because what I'm wondering is, they've been asking for help at the wall. They won't help, and they're asking from everywhere.
Right, they send ravens to all the kingdoms,
and they're telling them. And every time somebody talks about winter coming, I mean, you almost assume it's going to take the whole continent.
Yeah. And we saw the vision in the show, at least, with Dany walking to the throne room and it's snowing in the place. I mean, that's really far south.
That
compared to the wall.
is. Yeah.
Right. So you're talking about it could reach Dorne. You know, I don't know if we'll get that far, but yeah.
So I don't think they're going to stop at Winterfell. Like, I guess I'm still trying to think endgame here. What's got them riled up? If there is a queen or her heart or something or spirit there at Winterfell, it seems like they go through the wall, they get to Winterfell, they handle their business, and they don't go any further south. But I forgot about that Dany vision thing.
It's implied that something was broken, some pact, you know, maybe that the last hero set up, you know, that we, again, don't know what happened. People say, you know, it's speculated for years, well, man's breaking their side of the treaty because there's people north of the wall. But then again, those people, the wildlings, they were just innocent people born there. They didn't know anything about the ice pact.
Right, and they got mutilated.
Right, and you have people like Craster who are living north of the wall, just like the wildlings, but they live in basically a peace agreement with them.
Right.
Because he's giving away male children and they don't bother him. So they clearly don't care that there are a few people north of the wall. So to me, that's not a big enough thing because there's a few scattered tribes north of the wall for them to be coming back and trying to destroy the whole kingdom for it.
Okay. There is something bigger than whatever's going on at Winterfell that they're going to... Are they going to try to mow down the whole kingdom?
Yeah, I think they're going to try to mow down the whole kingdom. I think they're and because you have these, if it happened before the Long Night 8,000 years ago,
yeah,
you have all these stories about the Azor Ahai, Eldritch Shadow Chaser, you know, the prince that was promised that saved the world in some way. And so they come from all different cultures around the world, which could affect Essos too. There actually is a wall type of structure. Actually, it's 5 castles in Essos that people don't know about.
Really?
It's just referenced, but it's 5 castles, not a wall. And it's implied that they're, you know, guarding something too from invading Essos from the other side.
Are you serious?
But George R. R. Martin has said that the continents are not connected. So in other words, it couldn't be the same White Walkers coming from the lands of always winter, just going to, you know, the east and then coming in from that direction. So it's implied this is a worldwide thing. But we really don't know. So I guess in conclusion here, to kind of wrap some of this stuff up, you know, we've talked about some ideas of how Jon's connected to the ice side of things through the Stark lineage. I think there is something to that. I think that winter is coming was a warning that lost its meaning over time.
I do too.
I don't think we get all these stories about the Night's King and the Night's Queen for that matter, and, you know, the dance of the dragons and the Pact of Ice and Fire that never happened, the tragedy at Summerhall, you know, those type of events. Those all mean something to this story. They're not just thrown in there for fun. Mm-hmm. And it's not just about who Jon Snow's parentage is. Yeah, some of those stories and things like the tourney at Harrenhal, you know, it points directly to Lyanna being his mother, and those were things leading up to the reveal.
Yeah.
So once we get the reveal, like we have in the show already in the books, there's still something bigger there. So whether that's a sacrifice, whether that's, you know, him being a, you know, guardian of the wall, so to speak, if there's a wall that's rebuilt or some zone that they agree on some way, if there's some kind of dialogue, because we know that Craster has had some kind of dialogue with him, whether it was spoken in words or not, we don't know, but he obviously lives there in peace, so I don't think they really care about wildlings living north of the wall when it's just a few scattered tribes here and there. You have something going on with Jon in the Crypts of Winterfell, whether that's a collective dragon eggs calling to him, whether it's a, you know, a queen's soul, of the Night's Queen soul that they're after. But the timeline you got to take in consideration too. If they've been active for the last, you know, 20, 30 years even, before our story started, they went away 8,000 years ago. That's a long time in the scheme of things for them to come back now. You know, so something relatively recent has happened for them to all of a sudden want to come destroy the world. And Jon Snow being born at this time just happens to be the right time.
Let me ask you this, because that made me think. Let's say that is Jon's role, and I actually like that. I like that end for him if he resides at the wall forever as the buffer.
And the idea behind that came to me was, not to interrupt you, but is, you know, he's been at the wall the whole time, and he finally gets to leave the wall and become a Stark. Once he finds out who Daddy is, then it would be ironic for him to end up back at the same place forever, or what have you, or something like that. Now, it's just one theory, but...
Now, let me ask you this. Let's say that is the theory that plays out. Sansa is Queen in the North.
Queen in the North, I would think.
All right. Bran, does he stay up north like Bloodraven, or does he come back home and hang out? Because
that's a good question, because right now, technically he's the heir to Winterfell. He's still alive. They just don't know it.
Oh yeah,
so
that's right.
but with those kind of powers, I don't think he can just go live in a normal society. It's almost like Bloodraven when he was Brendan Rivers.
Yeah,
he was hated by most of the people because of all the rumors of sorcery. So he wasn't liked by the people because of all the Thousand Eyes and One, mystical stuff about him that they speculated about. So I don't think if people find out that he can do some of the things he can do, that he can just go back to Winterfell and live there in a normal society.
right.
So I think he's got to kind of be pushed out of the way, not necessarily killed, but for Sansa to take over as Queen of the North, or perhaps Queen of the Seven Kingdoms if that doesn't happen with Dany, if there is a Seven Kingdoms. Because again, it goes back to the end game as far as, is it going to be different, states or what have you, as far as a kind of a, separate kingdoms again like it used to be, or separate, independent states or what have you. So there's a lot of questions about that, but ultimately, Jon is the key to that, and I think the players around him will help to guide him towards that end game, that end role, that whatever he has to do, whether that's doing what the last hero did before, if it's even true.
You got to factor that in.
You got to factor in that this comes from a history that's so deep, like real world history, that we don't know how much is legend. We don't know how much is false. We know that the Azor Ahai thing with the flaming sword, like we were talking about, more than likely that's just a Valyrian steel sword. Jon has a dream in the books on the wall that he's up on the wall with a red sword, casting down people that come up the wall, including Ygritte, and he's wearing the armor described like the others that reflects everything around it.
Wow.
So he's seeing himself in the others' armor, holding a red sword, killing off people, including Robb and Ygritte, in this dream he had. So it's that fire connection, it's that ice connection. So there's just so many ways it could go. So again, I think if we lay out the premise of, the overall picture of things, if you could lay it out on a chart, Dany over here with the fire side, the Night King would be the ice side, or perhaps you could even consider, the Children of the Forest when they still lived, and there may still be some left because they did create the Night King. And then Jon's in the middle of ice and fire. He is not the antithesis of Dany.
No.
He is both. So that tells you he's the key to it. It's not just about a bastard being a bastard, and despite being a bastard, I should say, coming up in the world and making something of himself. So if you think about all the things we've talked about the Night's Queen and the Night's King story. That's there for a reason. If you talk about the last hero, what he supposedly did with, his 12 companions and went off to find the help of the children. But now there's no more children to get help from. Bran essentially got that help this time.
Yeah.
So there could be a big twist where Jon's not the key, where maybe it's Bran. But that doesn't make any sense in the context of the story. You can't have Bran warging a dragon, that takes away from Jon. You can't have, all these other things happen that could be potential twists, because that takes away from him being the son of Rhagar and Lyanna.
And you think that the horn that Sam has is just a shout out to the books? It's not going to be...
At this point I do, because, first of all, the ones in the books, the Horn of Jormungand or the Horn of Winter, which supposedly wakes giants from the earth, I think that's a metaphor for earthquakes. Maybe they're after that horn.
That idea.
That's been speculated too. But again, before the Night's Watch had it, it was buried by somebody. A lot of people presume that was Benjen, because it was wrapped in a Night's Watch cloak and what have you. They could be after that, just like Mance Rayder was when he was king beyond the wall, before he was killed on the show anyway. By Stannis being burned alive in Melisandre. In the show, he still lives. He was sent to Winterfell on Jon's behalf to try to find out what was going on with Arya, which ended up being a fake Arya. It's not even Sansa there in Winterfell. So those things tie into it too. They've been after the horn because they want to, and Mance didn't want to destroy the wall. He wanted the horn as a bargaining chip to get down south of the wall.
Are you serious?
He wanted the wall to stand so he could bring his people through and be safe. So that's the whole thing with Mance Rayder. And so, I think the wall's coming down one way or the other. I think, Bran may see that. Bran may cause that, because he has the mark, and maybe he don't think about it. He's like, I got to get to Jon and these people and tell them what's going on. and then inadvertently, he touches the ground, the wall comes coming down, or the horn gets involved somehow in the books at least. Because the show, we really don't have. The reason I say that because we did see the horn, and we did see Sam take it to the Citadel, but we've never seen Dragonbinder, and in the books, Euron has Dragonbinder, and that's his key to winning the Kingsmoot. Because he's like, I got this horn, it binds these dragons over here from this dragon queen, I'm going to take them, and I'm going to take over the world. Okay. And they all are like, Euron, and they take over, and that's how he wins the Kingsmoot.
Well, put yourself in the Night King's shoes. You didn't ask to be that.
That's right.
You know what
that's
I mean?
right. And that goes into, the whole, speculation talk and theory crafting about maybe they're not the bad guys. Because George R. Martin has said over and over, this is not about the classic fantasy, genre of good versus evil. The good guys in white and the black guys in black, and they're going to fight to the death, and the good guys win, and everybody lives happily ever after. He breaks all those tropes. And so the speculation is, since we haven't had a POV chapter in the books from the White Walker side of the world as far as their perspective,
there's a chance they could be a sympathetic figure.
You have to kind of you have to look at that in a way and say, you know what, they didn't ask to be created, they didn't ask to become war machines, they were just people,
right?
And so there's definitely an aspect of that. But when you see them created out of vengeance, I think that's what George R. Martin is trying to portray. Is this race was created out of vengeance, out of hate. Therefore they became rogue nuclear, WMDs or whatever you want to call it. But again, the dragons can be seen the same way. So
I like that.
So kind of to wrap this up again, I know I started this a minute ago, but we talked about trying to lay out some things here for the endgame speculation, right? So we have Jon's connection to the White Walkers in some way. Now, whether that's through the Night King being a Stark, or the original Night King being a Stark, the Night's King being a Stark as well, which is a completely separate story that happened a long time after the creation of the first Night King, and we hadn't seen him in the books. So I think there's a connection there. Again, like I said a minute ago, I think winter is coming was a warning. I think the Starks were connected in some way to the White Walkers or children, and that warning just kind of lost its meaning over the years. It lost its edge. Even Ned and those guys really didn't know what it meant. Because everything to them is still legend and myth now. The White Walkers haven't been seen in thousands of years. Yes, it was real, but those people have been gone for thousands of years. We heard Maester Lewin say that the brand magic's gone in the world. Maybe it used to be a big thing, but not anymore. Tyrion even says it to Jon. You don't really believe in Grumpkins and shit like that, do you? So everything's legend, but we're finding out that it's all true. And the Starks are now finding out it's all true, the ones left anyway. So I think he's connected from the ice side. Him being a Stark is important. So that means that there's got to be a connection to magic.
Yes.
Because otherwise it wouldn't matter that he was a Stark. He could have been a Targaryen and a Blackwood, or a Targaryen and a Bolton. You know what I mean? It has to be something related to the magic of the children and the White Walkers. Otherwise, it means nothing. And then on the Targaryen side, of course, you've got the magic of bonding with dragons and resistance to heat. And we'll talk about this more. Is, he gets his hand burned, saving Lord Commander Mormont. And they constantly remind us of him, gripping his burnt hand and stuff. And I think that was to connect him with fire a little bit. It was also a parallel moment with Dany when she actually got burned hand somehow or another, escaping Daznak's pit. But twice in the books, people forget about the second time a lot of times, she went unburnt. When she hatched her eggs. And then in Daznak's pit, as she's flying off in the books, her hair's on fire. She apparently dodged or didn't get burnt or whatever. But she recalls that it is just like before, as in when we hatched the dragons. I didn't burn. And then it goes on right in the same chapter to say her burns are healing on her hands. So how did that happen? Was that pulling a spear out? Did she not believe in that particular moment? So the show seems to be making her completely fireproof. She kills all the calls. She walks out of the hut unburnt again. That could have been the show's version of that, happening in Daznak's pit for the books. So Jon was burned, so he can't be a Targaryen. That was part of the things against the whole R+L J theory. But I think that was just a connection to remind us that he's connected to fire, but perhaps in certain moments, he's also going to prove he's fireproof.
I think so.
And if that's the case, he's also got to prove something on the ice side as far as the White Walker magic.
I'm excited about it. I can't wait to find out and see how close, the speculation is. Because that's all it is for everybody, right? I mean,
it is. I mean, and we don't have any
God,
book to
YouTuber
go.
is
That's
only
right.
speculating unless they're...
We can only go back to the books and reference the books and look at what they've done in the show and take note of what they leave out of the show as to what's important. You know, for example, Aegon's not in the show.
Right.
So to me, he's not going to be a big player in the books. Now, he's already landed in Westeros and trying to take over Westeros and said to hell with going to see Dany. He went straight to Westeros. But to me, just them leaving him out of the show shows me his overall importance as far as the end game of this thing.
Good point.
So I try to compare, you know, you have to go back to the books, the source material, and kind of take note of what they do skip over in the show, you know.
Well, I've enjoyed the heck out of this.
Yeah, and so I just wanted to kind of throw this out there and get people thinking and throw out some of the base, you know, the basis of all these theories that may come about, you know, as far as, you know, what he's going to do. But if I had to take just an overall guess at this point in this conversation, at least, is that Jon is the key because of blood, magic, not because just to be a secret marriage. I mean, anybody could have been secretly married in the show or the books, for that matter. It's got to be tied to magic, to fire magic, to blood magic, and then this northern ice nature magic that has something to do with the children who created the White Walkers. And I think that the other players around him, Bran, you know, is going to help with that because he can't physically stop anything. He can only see the future, the past.
Yeah,
he can't physically like put a barrier up and say, you know, I can stop the White Walkers. And then you have Sam, who I think is going to be a huge end player. I think he uncovers something in the Citadel that's important, and perhaps that is what the last hero did that we never learned. It was very, very vague on what he did. It just said he defeated the White Walkers. Well, that was myth.
Right.
He didn't defeat them because they came back.
Exactly.
So I think that Sam finds out what that was that he did, and that has to be Jon. And we may find out actually who he was, as far as, you know, was he an ice and fire baby? Because there's not been any. That's the whole thing. If you think, look, all this history in this show, in this story, in the history of the world of ice and fire, I mentioned before the Pact of Ice and Fire. That never happened. There has never been a Targaryen and a Stark offspring. Bloodraven was the closest you can get. Him and his sisters were the closest you can get to that because he came through Targaryen and Blackwood, which is a northern house that has Stark blood that they had intermarried for thousands of years. So he was kind of an ice and fire baby, but a pretty special character.
Exactly.
Now, we never knew what happened to his sisters or found out, but anyway, that's kind of the premise. Hopefully that sets everything up a little bit.
Yeah,
gives you some ideas.
These two videos are going to spawn a lot of questions. Can we then get back to some Q&As?
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. So what we're going to do, I think this is probably the best way to go about it. We'll go ahead and do a Q&A next.
Off of this?
Awesome. And just based off the stuff we mentioned here, to wrap it up as far as speculation, probably get into some specifics, a little bit more specific. I mean, we had a lot of specific little stories that we told to kind of set this up. But maybe some more specific in-game, here's what he's going to do possibly, or at least narrow it down, get in the ballpark.
Yeah.
Because I can't say I have the answer.
No.
I can't say, nobody can say they have the absolute answer as far as what he's going to do, but I want to get into the in-game, long-term, what's this mean in the next 2 years for the show, and the next probably 10 years for the books.
Yeah.
For Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring coming out. So anyway, guys, that's going to do it for us. We'll do a Q&A probably in a couple days. So leave your questions in the comments below for this video and for Season 7 or anything else you want to talk about. We'll be glad to answer those as well. Anyway, thanks for all the support, you guys. Really, really appreciate it. Be sure to subscribe to get everything. Thanks for watching.
And we'll see you